Good morning, all. I was just thinking of being a human being and the time that we find ourselves in. And I suppose the potential that's been squandered in terms of what we could be interested in and what our society could be oriented around, right? So we have, if you take any subject, right, so be it religion, be it mythology, be it the history of language, the history of peoples, space, or whatever it is out there, right? The origins of humanity, where did we come from? The total history of Earth, what happened here, right? Even the structure of Earth. Is it flat? Is it curved? Is it geocentric? Does it go around the sun, or does the sun go around us, right? What are the stars? What are the planets? Are there aliens? All this kind of stuff. Great stuff, interesting stuff. Can we promote life to hundreds of years, or can we not, right? All those sorts of things. Can you communicate with animals? Psi phenomenon. Can you move things with your mind, right? Can you speak to someone without using your words? Can you speak to them non-verbally, right? Can you communicate mind to mind? All these sorts of things. Really lovely, interesting things. We could have a society oriented around that stuff, but instead we're not. We're caught in a tale as old as time, really, in terms of written records with people, right? It nearly goes back to the Cain and Abel story, right? And not to just take that story and go, therefore the Bible is whatever. No. Just take the meaning of the story, right? So you have jealous, envious set of people, or a person, or that trait embodied in the person in Cain, who kills his brother because his brother is preferred to him, or he feels like his brother is elevated above him without merit, right? So he kills him. We're still dealing with that issue in society today. Like, we're still dealing with the issue of groups of people or individuals whose aim might align to such a degree that they buddy up with other groups of individuals, or they buddy up with other individuals to the same end, right? We're still dealing with that issue. And for people who the last few years have really switched a lot of people onto this and made them put their head up and look around and go, actually, well, what's going on here? I'm not sure I like this centralizing force that is able to compel me to not do my daily things that I want to do, because I used to consider myself as a free human being, and I thought that society was good and oriented towards stabilizing civilization and making sure that people were able to reach the heights that they could reach, right? And a lot of people have been disillusioned with that. And it's a funny thing in psychology, like, or in man's thinking, right? Woman's thinking as well, right? Be all inclusive. In human thinking, we tend to believe, or we get stuck and fixated on the point where we copped onto certain things, and we begin to see the origin of that dis-ease or that malignancy as stemming from the time when we first recognized them. And I think that's faulty thinking, because in order for the centralization of power and the wielding of state authority and power more so than authority, right, or even force, the apparatus for that needed to be in place. Okay, so it's not just a case of every society was oriented in a positive way and in a humanistic way, and then bang, a couple of bad eggs got hold of it and just decided to upend it. That wouldn't have worked, right? If it genuinely was oriented in a positive way, we would have felt the benefits of that all along, right? We would have been more individually minded in terms of entertaining different perspectives. We wouldn't have been so easily corralled into this one worldview as we were over the last few years, right? So the system and the apparatus for that sort of tyranny needed to be in place prior to the wielding of such force. So that opens up the door then for history. So what led up? What were the building processes step by step to implementing that structure that allowed for such wielding of a centralized force from the state and from governments worldwide, right? So you can look at it one way, that everybody just gathered the same information and they came up with the same sort of approach and response to it, and it all just happened to be faulty. Almost everyone across the world made the exact same mistakes with the exact same information. That's bizarre to me. Or you can look at it that the apparatus for centralizing and controlling worldviews and how people see things and perceive things and interpret information is so vast that it covers nearly all of the countries in the world. And we've seen this on full display over the last few years, right? And we're continuing to see it, particularly across Western nations at the moment, right? So all Western governments appear to be walking lockstep and making the exact same decisions and implementing the exact same policies. Or if their policies are slightly nuanced or different, the outcomes of these policies are tending to look the very, very same, right? So, in order to get to such a position where people are so willingly accepting of this use of force against them, we need to start looking honestly back at history and say, right, what were the building blocks that led up to this machine, right, that's now running? Did it just start running a few years ago, or has it been stretching back? And if it has been stretching back, how far did it go? When was the beginning of this? So the relationship with evil is something that we haven't squared away. And I think we were lulled into a false sense of security over the last few decades that all would be okay, because we equated having money and the ability to borrow money and live above our means and afford fancy things and things we would like, to be able to gratify ourselves essentially immediately or almost immediately. That confused us. We equated that with the world being good and people in it and people in positions of power being good. Okay, and I'm not so sure that was the correct way of interpreting what was going on over the last few decades. So I think it's absolutely valid to look back over history and to begin to question every single thing. Every single thing. There is no harm in that. It doesn't mean become overly cynical and throw everything out. It means question every single thing. Where are we? What's going on? Given the type of society and the type of relationship that I would like between myself and those who are in positions of power in the world, who are they? What sort of power do they have? Is what is going on marrying up with that ideal that I have, or that vision that I would like to see, right? And if not, then when did that begin? And if it was stretching back further in the last few years, how come so many people, how come we were all so blind to it? Why weren't we paying attention? What was put in place in order to distract us, or what served as a distraction for us in order for us not to be taking the question of evil very seriously? And what I mean by evil is very, very simple. It doesn't have to be anything biblical or anything overly religious. What my interpretation of evil is the opposite of live. So evil is live spelled backwards, right? They spell each other backwards. And to live is to be yourself. The nature you bring into the world, be that, express that, and follow your own proclivities and follow your own interests and your own natural tendencies and desires, right? And also live in a way that allows other people to do the same thing. So evil to me is the opposite of live, in that it is when other people try and hijack someone's desires, someone's interests, someone's mind, the way they interpret things. When someone tries to dictate or alter or manipulate or coerce that in another person, that's evil to me. And I think it's very, very sad that we are still stuck in this position of not even recognizing that. We've fallen so far. Cain and Abel, that story is explicit, right? That's a bad thing that happened. We've fallen off so far that now we nearly justify these things. Oh, well, it's for the greater good. Okay, well, how many people do you get to kill then before this greater good is met, right? So we're climbing up a near vertical cliff here, right? But we know that it's the right thing to do. And I think that's a good motivator for people. And on the top of that could be a beautiful plateau, right? A lovely plateau. Or at least the incline won't be as steep, right? But we need to get there. We need to start cultivating a relationship with evil and admit that it is there. And keep it simple. People manipulating and exerting a force over other people doesn't have to just be physical. That's another fallacy that we fall into, that all evil must be physical. And if it's not physical, then, well, it doesn't really exist. You have a choice in it. Of course, but two things can be true. You can have a choice in being manipulated. You can accept the manipulation. But it does, just because you accept the manipulation, or you have the ability to accept it or decline it, doesn't mean that there's not someone there trying to manipulate. Okay? So there's two parties at play there to create a third thing. There's a relationship. So there's yourself, who has your autonomous thinking, and then there's people outside of there that are trying to hijack that and take that as themselves, right? And suck off that. Parasites. There's real parasites in the world. And that's a fascinating question and a fascinating topic. And this, we're being forced to come to grips with that at long last. And I think given the technology we have today, that you can communicate, like, topics can become worldwide topics of interest in a moment's notice. Okay? Where you have all the world looking at one thing. And that can be used for good or evil, or good or bad, whatever you want, right? But we have an opportunity here in these days to collectively, always bringing our own individuality to it, to address the question of evil. And if we can overcome that in this day and age, I think we can flourish for a long, long period of time. Well, always being, what is it? The price of freedom is perpetual vigilance, right? So always keeping your eye on the ball. And that always comes back to what your view is of life, what life means to you, what it means to be alive, what it means to be a human being, and what it means to be you. You know? And there's so many things out there that will pull our attention from looking inwards to outwards. Watching this video now is an example of that. Your energy is focused on me talking, if it is, and your energy is focused and directed onto something outside of yourself. It might allow for a bit of self-reflection, but that's a choice you have to make. You can just watch this and then skip on to the next thing and off you go. Or you can watch this and go, what do I think about the meaning of life? What does it mean to me to be alive? And what does it mean to be myself? What do I know about myself? What do I dismiss about myself? How often do I distract myself? How much time do I spend with myself without having my attention taken onto something else? Because sitting down watching Netflix is not spending time with yourself. It's spending time with the thoughts and ideas of another person. You're being just entertained, right? So, fascinating times. And it's a beautiful time to be alive, because we actually we are being forced, we are being dragged, kicking and screaming. Some are going willingly, but we are at a point now where we have absolutely no choice but to confront evil in its human form. We don't need to go beyond the questions of it. Is there anything extraterrestrial in it? We can stumble along the way, but the starting point is, what does it mean for me to be alive? And am I okay with not thinking for myself so much and allowing others to just decide how I perceive the world? Interesting stuff.